All right, so crypto market updates. Trend riding Bitcoin on cruise control. It's kind of like the theme of the month, really. So, as we can see on the weekly time frame, right? Generally, if you want to kind of map out and look at price action, it's best to start off on the larger time frames and then zoom in into the smaller time frames. So we can see that the market is obviously parabolic, right? As in, the trend is going straight up vertical, right? And it even started to go parabolic here when we broke out of the all-time high. We had that big correction. But now it's, the size of these weekly candles are getting a lot bigger, right? You can see this weekly candle and this weekly candle right here were record-breaking candle sizes, right? I mean, you could take this one weekly candle and probably dwarf the size of, maybe the entire trend here. So dollar wise, percentage wise, might not be the biggest, but dollar wise, definitely the largest weekly candles that we've seen. Now, obviously, as we go parabolic, we definitely are hitting a bit of a danger zone as far as the bull trend is concerned. And the reason why I say that is because generally a parabolic market is, full summer, full bloom, right? Summer peak. But once it rolls over and gets exhausted type of thing, then you start to hit the fall. Then you start to hit the big violent corrections, right? And we haven't, we had a nice correction here when there was a lot of block size FUD, and I'm still riding 60% of my long position from this dip buy down here. So obviously my next target was the 6,000, not 6,000, 5,000 area. Now, hitting that 5,000 area, it's not going to take much to get there. We're pretty much looking at a whole whopping 5.73%. So that's not a lot to get there, right? And as I've showed before, if you look at the fib extension from the last move, the last run up, 5,200 takes us to 1.618 area, right? So to hit this fib level on the nose, we're looking at about 9% to get to 1.618 area, right? Obviously, we kind of hit a lot of resistance in through the 4,000 area. I missed scalping this dip buy here, but that would have been a perfect dip buy, right? As it touches up on that ascending trend line, 3 points of contact, right? So something else to make note of on the larger time frames is if I'm looking at the daily or the weekly candles. Actually, I'll go back to the weekly. Look to the weekly. Sometimes in the parabolic blow-off phase, sometimes what'll happen in the final step, and we don't know if this is going to happen. I mean, we don't know where the top is going to be, but sometimes in the final step, what you could end up seeing happening is a weekly green candle that dwarfs the size of all the other candles, right? Basically just completely dwarfs the size of all the other candles. And that often happens on parabolic blow-off tops. And that's when you really want to start taking profit and selling into strength. But a couple interesting things is that the Bitcoin Investment Trust is actually trading for $10,000 a Bitcoin right now. So that's kind of interesting. So really, I mean, what we do know is that in this accelerated price action, that we're probably coming closer to the end. But where that'll take us, we don't know. I mean, will it top out at 5,200? Will it take us to 7,000 at the next fib extension? Or are we going to go straight to 10,000? I mean, I'll tell you what my plan is, right? I mean, I'll probably close out incrementally along the way and leave some running. But if we hit the $10,000 mark, which sounds ridiculous, and again, I don't want to be, over exuberantly bullish or anything like that. But if we did hit the 5-digit mark, then that would be like such a huge psychological milestone. It'd be very similar to when Bitcoin went from 3 digits to 4 when it hit the 1200 area. And because that would be such a huge psychological milestone, I don't think we would stay at that area for very long. I think we'd likely tag it and then probably have a very, very violent correction and bear trend. So if we ever went to that area, I would literally probably sell at least 50% of all my holdings, of my Bitcoin holdings, and I'd probably just clean up my entire crypto portfolio as a whole and just batten down the hatches for a bear trend. Like even selling into strength preemptively before reversal patterns or any of that stuff. If we hit 5 digits, I'm definitely going to be cashing out a huge chunk, because it would remind me of what happened here, right? When we went from, in 1 year, we went from double digits to 4 digits. It's a fairly big move. So this was all kind of in 2013. Percentage wise, if you were to measure 2014, I mean 13,000% growth. Now, obviously, the market wasn't as liquid back then, right? So right now for this year, the start of this year, we're looking at almost like 500% returns. So the market is definitely exaggerated right now. Make no mistake, this isn't a healthy bull trend, and you can tell because you just look at the angles and the lines, right? And you see how the angles just keep shifting and getting more and more steep, right? And now the angle is straight vertical, right? So this is when it's straight up vertical like that. That's how you could tell parabolic. So there's parabolic on the larger time frame, right? And then you could get like smaller parabolic blow-offs on the smaller time frames, right? Like, so for example, even if you go all the way back to, let's say 2015, right? This is like a smaller parabolic blow-off. And now this seems like nothing compared to where we're at now. It's at 500, but you see it just kind of shoots up, the size of the candles get larger, and then boom, big correction, right? So that this is on the smaller time frame, smaller cycle, but now we're experiencing that exact same thing on the larger cycle, which definitely tells me that we're coming closer to the end on the larger cycle. But how long could that last? Well, it could last a few days, it could last a few weeks, it could last a few months, right? Or something else that could happen is we end up getting, maybe we hit 5,200 and get a violent correction, and then maybe we do another V-bottom and go for like round 2 to 5,000. I seem to, my hypothesis is that 5,000 is probably like a magnet area, maybe similar to the 500 area that we had in that range in the previous years. So I think if we were to cross that 5,000 mark, I wouldn't be surprised if things accelerated very fast. I also wouldn't be surprised to see a huge correction at that area. And maybe we need a correction at that area. We have a big pullback, and who knows, maybe perfect world scenario, we'd have a pullback, and maybe that pullback makes a higher low, and we get like maybe we got like another V bottom. Maybe the pullback would look like retest prior resistance as support. For all we know, we could get like a pullback and it falls in perfectly, crashes perfectly, breaks down on this ascending trend line. And then even though the market be parabolic, that would be cause for another dip buy and possibly a recharge for another wave up, right? So kind of does get a little bit ridiculous, but you could see these as waves too. Like, so this would be one wave from the all-time high breakout, and perhaps we're in wave two, and maybe we'll get a third one that goes up even higher once we tag resistance and have another correction. So the bull trend definitely can be dragged out, but it's going to hit counterforce eventually where we're going to start to see some red. But I suspect I'll sell into strength if this candle starts to get really extended, right? And I'll probably take some off the table if we tag that next fib level, or keep my eyes open for a breakdown pattern. All right, so now looking at some altcoins. So looking at the altcoins, you could see gainers and losers list, right? Wow, Rise is fairly ridiculous. 46 million in trading volume right now on Rise. That's pretty nuts. I remember when that market was like right in the gutter, not too long ago, basically several months ago. Now that's a parabolic candle if I've ever seen one. And you know what's interesting is that this is linked to masternodes. Again, this is another one of those masternode markets where people start to hoard and accumulate, similar to Strat, similar to Dash, similar to that. So it seems like masternode markets are very hot. So what I would do in a situation like this is, on a fundamental level, maybe do some research and try to find new markets that have or will have masternodes, and maybe just like accumulate enough to run a masternode and hold it until it does something stupid like this. I mean, you're looking at 5,000% gains from when it was an accumulation in the gutter. And I remember when this market cap was under 1 million not too long ago, right? Just at the beginning of the year. And now the market cap is 69 million. So it's been gaining a lot of energy and attention. So not really my style at this price level. But the concept, I mean, I would have much preferred, if I was going to do a breakout, would have much preferred catching one over in this area. But the problem with a lot of these markets, especially if they don't start off very liquid, is by the time you get the breakout, it's already up a ton, right? So you definitely got to manage risk. Actually, one really interesting trend that I was looking at yesterday was OMG. And I actually did scale in, a modest position size, not a huge position size, but I did scale in on a breakout last night. This market just keeps on producing like ascending triangles, right? Very, very beautiful price action, very bullish price action. Ascending triangle. Ascending triangle. So I was a little bit late to the party. I mean, my preference is to always buy down in accumulation as cheap as I can. That's just my own personal preference. So if I'm a little bit late to the party, like, I'll catch breakouts, but usually for me it's like smaller position sizes. This market's up, just in the past, few months, this market's up already, 1,200%. So it's a pretty substantial gain. Another ascending triangle pattern. So like breakout after breakout after breakout. Now, we don't have as much volume as we did on these ones, so you have to be careful. But if you were to do a breakout, then, the way to do it, like let's say you caught a breakout here, the way to do it is you definitely want to have, your set risk. So if you caught let's say you caught a breakout a little bit later up here, you'd probably want to set a mental stop. For myself, it would be a mental stop where I would cut out at 20%. So I got to calculate how much of a dollar loss that would be. So how much I'm willing to risk in order to do that. And if you're doing an all-time high breakout, you definitely want to have a stop, whether it's a hard stop or a mental stop. These aren't the type of trades where you could just buy it low in accumulation and bag hold it for a while. while you be patient. These are the kind of trades, it's like either it's going to produce some momentum and hit your targets, or maybe you ride a trend, or it's going to flop. You're going to get a fake out, pop and flop, and you're going to definitely want to cut out. And the reason why is because your downside risk is a lot higher, right? I mean, if you were to catch a breakout here and let's say it just flopped, let's say it just did a full retrace, I mean, you could lose 90% of your position. Now, this market is extremely liquid. There's a lot of volume. I think it was like 200 million in volume or something like that. So the chances of getting a full retrace like that are pretty nil. However, you definitely don't want to bag hold a breakout. So generally breakouts are like you have to use stops for them, right? You can catch them, but if they flop and fail, you want to cut out of them, right? You're better to take a small hit than bag hold a huge hit, in my opinion, right? Unless of course maybe you're catching some really earlier breakouts like down here, then maybe you can be a little bit more patient with that. But so this is definitely a very strong trending market. A little bit late to the party on this one, but I took a stab at a smaller size position on the breakout to see if it gains momentum to push up into another zone. And if it flops, I'm just going to cut out of it. No big deal. So basically, as far as like a lot of the lower accumulation plays that I'm in, again, nothing has really changed. Those are just more patience plays. There is a cost for trying to get in at the bottom, and that's that you have to wait a while before it takes off. But the reward is if it does take off, you're going to get the highest reward potential or upside potential than waiting. So, and then on another note, couple of interesting, on a side note, not as related, but interesting crowd sell that I have my eyes open on is X8 currency. I may participate in this. We'll see. Looks very interesting. It's kind of so one of the co-founded projects that they're helping out with, but it's a way to hedge. They want to create a token similar to Tether, but you'll be able to store this like an Ethereum-based token. So I'm interested in this because I feel like we need more hedging tools. They're going to use like a basket of currency, like mixed between fiat and gold, and this algorithm that balances out the equation to create stability. Now, I would, like, even as a hedging tool, I would still treat this lightly. I would never put entirety of my crypto portfolio and hedge into that. There's still obviously some counterparty risk because they have to manage the funds or whatnot. And I'm not entirely sure if I will participate, but as far as ones that kind of look interesting that I think would have a lot of use would definitely be this, because crypto traders definitely need some better hedging tools. Other markets that I found interesting, obviously we're starting to see some bounces happening. I was kind of patiently waiting for Dogecoin to come back down into this area, but because the markets are really bullish, that might not happen. But you start to see that it sold off big time. Crack down below 78. Might continue to crack down below as well, but you can kind of see that it broke that immediate descending trend line, right? So this is kind of just something I'm watching, obviously, because the percentage gains on this can be ridiculous. So if it has a bounce where prior resistance area, you see a lot of traffic in through this noise. Now it could just be like a pullback before further down. For me with Dogecoin, anything below 35 satoshis, anything below this line right here is good for accumulation, right? So hasn't quite hit my accumulation zone again, but this was a market that we were into, and so big pullback. So I'm definitely keeping my eyes on this, but there's a lot of volume. You can see a ton of volume on a lot of these markets, so that the overall markets are fairly bullish. And basically all my other positions I'm just being somewhat patient in, right? I'm just riding and waiting for some volume to cycle through into some other some of the other markets that I am in. So that's it for today's market update. Cheers.